So we're
right,
talking
Megan,
about
take us away.
leadership. Okay, perfect. We are talking about leadership and self-deception book. So this is the one I have. I don't know if there's different ones. Yep, Stephanie has one that looks slightly different, but it's the same stuff, right?
And these are the two different like images, covers that they show on Audible, which
Oh,
are
okay.
read by different narrators. So yours is read by a different narrator than mine was.
Does yours say what edition it is?
Second, expanded second edition.
Okay, this one's the third edition, so that's probably why.
I wonder what they've changed.
I don't know. But I
Oh,
mean, the fact that they have a third edition, that means it's good, right?
it means I might have to get the third edition or the latest and greatest, because I don't know if you guys are like me, and maybe you can't see, but
Oh yeah, all the little notes. Well, and I did this one audio version because I was working. So yeah, mine doesn't have any notes yet.
whole pages folded back and dog-eared all across the top.
Yeah.
But that's from the first two readings. I also listened to it audio version on Audible because I mean this one's totally worth having both.
Austin, what you listened to it in audio, I think?
He's
He might,
muted.
he might be gone.
He's muted for a second.
Sorry, guys. Keaton's having a meltdown for a second, and then I will be back.
Kid in the car. Okay. Well, what do you want to talk about with this book? Because when I was listening to it, I feel like everyone can benefit from this. But at the same time, it's something that I'm like, I'd have to listen to it over and over again or read it and really research it to be able to explain it to someone and have them get the takeaway that they need to get based off the book.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So if you don't realize, or if you don't know, one of the founders of the Arbinger Institute who authored this book, I can't remember his name. It's left me, but one of the founders of that institute actually wrote another book based on these exact same principles. And it's not as easy of a read. It's a little bit more textbook like.
Oh, okay.
But it's called Bonds That Make Us Free, or Bonds That Make Men Free, or something. Bonds That Make Us Free, I think. So good. And it really goes into deep dive.
It goes in deeper than just this, because that's the same thing. Like this one is like almost like the surface level of it, right? But they did a fabulous job at explaining it and making it very relatable in it as well.
Yeah, so it's read like a novel, and I love that the character who's being like trained has these kind of like, doubts and questions that he comes back with, because it opens up, the opportunity for them to like answer any of the skeptic. Like if you're a skeptic reading the book, I feel like all of the skeptical nuances and questions that somebody might have around the principles, I feel like they addressed most of them.
Yeah.
But there is one that I do have a question about. It's not necessarily a skeptic's question, but I have a question that I want to ask you guys, but we'll do it in a little bit later. Because I think it would be helpful just for us to each kind of like share what our overarching takeaway from the book was.
Okay. Well, do you want to start first then?
Okay, sure. Well, obviously, I mean, I'm sure yours says getting out of the box on the cover.
Yeah, getting out of the box. That's
the overarching theme, really, is how to get out of the box. And of course, the story tells us what the box even is. It helps to describe how we get in it, how we can get out of it. The challenge is staying out of the box all the time. So for me, I like to tell people that the first time I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, like this person needs it, and I could teach my kids about this, and my boss, and you want your spouse to read it, and you recognize all the people who have a problem being in the box. and definitely not yourself. I don't know.
Which is like the whole point of the book, right?
Exactly. Like I was so egotistical to think that I did not have a problem. And so it took me a second reading for me to go, oh, yeah, hi, hello. Kind of like,
I'm the problem, it's me.
I am the problem, it's me. Totally. Yep. And that's when I really, really started to implement the strategies and the teachings of the book and really see a powerful difference in my life and in the relationships that I had with my family, with my spouse, with my neighbors, friends. I mean, that wasn't too difficult because that's just surface level, but it even impacts the way that I conduct my business and how I interact with my clients in a major, major way. So I don't know if that like really described it to me, but to me, I guess the overarching theme for me is the book teaches you how to have the best way, the simplest way I can say it is taught me how to love.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I was surprised that I came to that realization that I didn't really know how to love without like strings attached.
Yeah, like what's in it for me?
What's in it for me, or like there are conditions on my love for you, and you have to meet those certain conditions in order for me to love you. Yeah, just different things like that. So what this book doesn't tell about is like the labels of the different types of boxes that you can find yourself in.
Oh, yeah, they don't go into any, like really into that.
Yeah. So I think that comes from the Anatomy of Peace, which is basically like the sequel to the book. So I'll just kind of like leave that little teaser there and let you.
So there's a sequel to this one.
Basically, yeah. A lot of people have read the Anatomy of Peace, and I think they're standalone books. You could totally read one without the other, but if you read them both together, it gives you lots of good tools.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know there was a sequel because they don't say that at the end or anything.
Oh,
right?
really? Because
I don't know. Maybe I skipped out of that part. I don't know. Let's see.
I think at the end of mine, yeah, it gives you the first couple of chapters of the Anatomy of Peace.
Mine.
Like the first 2 chapters.
Hang on. I didn't read the book, so now I've got to look at the book.
Oh, yeah. See if your book. I also love, while you're looking, that my version, I'm sure yours does too, has an index of different like topics that they go into or concepts, I guess. So if you need to have a quick reference, you can, flip through the index, which I actually used to try to find something after I read it. Does yours have the excerpt?
It has one for the outward mindset, but not that one.
Oh, that is a different book, I think.
Yeah, so
I haven't read that one.
And it's from the outward mindset. Oh, so look, it says here, this is leadership and self-deception, and the Anatomy of Peace help people become aware of the problem they didn't know they had. They equip readers to understand how they can leave the box and engage with others more collaboratively and productively. The latest selling book, The Outward Mindset, details how to implement and sustain the change across organizations. Mm-hmm. So it's just another book to add to the series.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get it.
Well, and so that's what I like. So if you do the audio version, I think it was about 5 hours long. So it wasn't really it's not a very big book. I mean, I should have looked at that before I closed this up. The whole book
it's like 190 pages
is 177 on mine.
Okay.
And that doesn't include like the resources that they have at the end, but the actual book read part is 177 pages. And honestly, I feel like I need to...
Okay, mine's the same, actually.
Okay. I feel like I need to go through the actual book. I think I got a lot out of it from just listening to it, but I am the type of person, like you were showing yours, how it's all,
dog-eared and marked up.
And all marked up, because I feel like that's how I retain stuff better, and because I can actually look at it rather than sitting there and, oh, that was interesting, and not, not playing it back or reading through it again a second time. Because as like you were saying, when I was reading or listening to it, I was thinking, ooh, so-and-so needs to listen to this, or man, I've done that before. Totally me, right? Like, but at the same time, I was sitting there thinking, okay, that explains why I do something the way I do. Like, I didn't realize I was out of the box more than I thought. Does that make sense?
You were out of the box more than you realized?
Yeah.
I was in the box more than I ever expected.
Yeah. So, I mean, like with certain people, job. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely in the box with that person. Right. But like, there's times when I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that I was being out of the box in that way.
Job.
So it makes more sense. And I feel as you get older, I've gotten into the box more. Right.
Oh, how funny.
There
have been different seasons of my life where there's more in the box and more out of the box.
Yeah. And I think that's something to remember too, is that different seasons, right? There's different ways of it. But it's interesting though, that I loved that the main thing, like the problem, like they start the book is like, you have a problem. And the problem is that we always say it's someone else's fault. Yeah. Rather than like taking credit.
Well, totally. We always want to think that we're not the problem for any situation, that it wasn't our fault. It, like, we are in the right. They are always in the wrong,
Yeah. And I just loved, like, there was examples about people not being in the box and showing like that they take ownership of things, and how much easier that is to respond to rather than,
totally.
You know what I mean? Like just being like, I love how they show the different dynamic, and honestly, you really have to read the book to.
So for example, to illustrate a little bit of what you're talking about right now, one of the things I really, really like to implement in my business is whenever they're like, if my clients come to me and they are approaching me with some sort of problem or concern that they have, it could be about me, how I've handled things, or the outcome, the process, whatever. I have found that I can totally put out the fire, any fire that they have inside of them, by just saying, oh my gosh, you're totally right. I can see how you can think that way, or how it was perceived that way, or I can see that I could have done something better or different. Suddenly there is no contention. They are totally calmed down. It just diffuses the entire situation.
Yeah. And I mean, they have a new respect for you too, for owning up to
totally.
And it might not even have been your mistake, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that I have discovered.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, you perceive it as not your mistake, but they might like.
Well, I didn't realize that there was a problem until they bring it to my attention. And then it's just like, it's taken practice for me to be able to look through other people's lenses, kind of back at myself. Obviously, kids are really good for us in that way, if we allow them to be.
Right, Austin?
Our own children, not other people's children. Our own children typically will. But when I start to, the more I practice that, and the more I, flex that muscle, the better I can see where I am causing somebody a problem, and I am the problem.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it also takes a little bit of practice to learn how to, eat a little bit of humble pie if you need to, and say like, I can see how you might be right, and I will, commit to working on that for next time.
Yeah. It's about how you handle the situation, and if you blow up kind of at them too.
Yeah.
I love too in the book that the people that are teaching the I can't remember his name, but the guy in the book, they keep saying that they're still working on it as well. Like, that it's not like a one and done thing. It's a learned, I like how you say that. It's a learned thing that you have to continually work at.
Yeah. You have to I found that for me, I have to make a very conscious effort to kind of like remove myself from the box, to work on these principles and these strategies. In fact, I've decided that it's going to be my yearly December read. It's so perfect to kind of like remind yourself and get yourself kind of ready for a new year. In my opinion, I loved reading it in December, and I definitely gain something every time I read it. And this time when I was reading it, I was actually going through, some personal challenges at the same time. And so it was kind of bringing some of those to the surface again. And I was, where it's just like, but they're the problem, and I was actually working, with somebody who's really close to me who feels like she's on the verge of divorce or whatever, feeling like there is no hope left. And I invited her to read the book as well. And the question I have for you both, I don't know, I should have maybe asked you this while you were reading it so you could have a little bit of time to prepare and think about it. But this person that I had invited to read the book as well, she feels verbally and emotionally abused in her relationship. And so I feel like it's easy for physical abuse for us, everybody to just kind of like recognize it, see the danger, see the harm, see the problem, and say, yes, you should just like remove yourself from that situation. But I feel like emotional or verbal abuse is a different beast. And so when she was talking to me about it, she's like, well, I don't know how, this can apply in my situation. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, so my first thought is that I think, so it's a two-way street, right? Totally. So she can change her mindset, but that doesn't change the other person. So that also still leaves the issue. Because you can try as hard as you can, but if the other person's not going to give with it, I mean, honestly, though, if you are, in the book, they gave the example of the husband and wife issue where it's not going so well.
Yeah.
And I mean, him just trying a little bit harder and, not getting himself out of the box towards her made her less out of the box for him. So I wonder,
made her more out of the box, right?
Yes, that's what I meant to say. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. It took her out of the box as well, just a little bit. But he's like, we have never had that good of like that night went so well, because they were both out of the box from each other. So I wonder, like, even if, and maybe she's already out of the box and trying really hard, and if that's the case, then honestly, if the other person's not willing, right, to even like notice what else, what do you do in that situation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like hey, I think we should read this book together. It depends on the person if they'll even do that, right?
It's tough because the 4 boxes that they kind of categorize most problems dealing with are the I deserve box, better than box, like I'm better than you. So
that makes sense. Yeah, both of them are making sense.
The third one is worse than. You can make yourself out to be worse than somebody else. So you also would treat somebody poorly if you feel like you're not as good as them. And the needs to be seen as. And when you start to just remember those 4 categories as you go through life on a day-to-day basis, and if you're self-aware enough to be able to, kind of like compartmentalize different experiences throughout your day.
You basically sit down and like, okay, what box am I in a box right now?
Right. Yeah. Like, which one is it?
What am I feeling right now? Because, there's times when people send you, like, I'll get emails sometimes that I work so hard on something and someone comes back and is like, no, but that's not. And you just like get upset because you're like, I worked so hard on this. Right. And then I always have to take a step back and come back to it and I look at what they said and I'm like, that actually makes it better. Like,
right.
But in the moment, you're just like,
you get heated, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
Like your defenses go up. You want to blame somebody else or make an excuse for yourself, which, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I'm just going to mention, if nobody knows about the Gottmans, then their research on marriage and stuff, they have what they call the 4 horsemen. And it kind of introduces the 4 horsemen into the same situation. So I find that same thing happens where it's just like, okay, so something I don't perform well. Like, let's say I'm late, which is a thing for me. Obviously. So if I'm late, what do? I need to be seen as somebody who is so busy that if only you knew how busy I was, or
and it makes it okay, right?
How difficult it was. Yeah. So then I start making excuses and giving justifications and whatever, which they give example after example of justification and blame and, all that kind of stuff in the book. But yeah, so then all of a sudden I need to be seen as somebody who is really, really has it together. It's not my fault, like, if you were in the same situation, the same thing would happen, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When maybe there's some truth. Maybe I need to start changing something,
Yeah, like what could you have changed to get there on time?
Right. Yeah.
I cut out that 10 minutes of something else.
Exactly. Yep, totally. So, yeah, I don't know. It's one of my favorite books. Like I said, it taught me how, and continues to teach me how to love people better. And I know that's a really generic fluff word.
Well, and it's like we said, like, it's hard to explain without reading it. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think the way that you're putting it is a very good way to explain it. I remember you saying that before I read it, like a long time ago. And I was like, okay, I don't know how that works until you read it.
Yeah. And the cool thing, if you want to, like, I'll just mention Anatomy of Peace. They talk about how to influence change in others and stuff. How to have a peaceful heart, because if you have a heart that's at peace and not at war, then things don't ruffle your feathers, and so it's easier to stay out of the box. So that's kind of how they continue the teaching and the concepts.
Well, and then there's the other new book now that it sounds like you need to get and read. That one was, again, if I can find it.
Yeah.
Outward Mindset. Outward Mindset. It's called The Outward Mindset, though.
Okay.
But Austin, if you are available, we'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you're still dealing with an unhappy child in the car.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I've been listening the whole time, so I liked you guys' input a lot. And I kind of want to go back just a little bit, if you don't mind, to getting out of the box, and not necessarily just getting out, but staying out. Did we kind of go over that a little bit?
I don't think we did. We just kind of touched the surface of even what it was. So
to me, that is my biggest problem. I'll say that straightforward, is that even when I find a way to escape, which, do you remember what he said, how we get out of the box?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You're going to just have to remind us.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, right? He said it's right in front of you all the time, and it's not a change of behavior. It's not a change.
It's the decision, the self-betrayal.
No, that's what gets us into the box, right?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Like, once you're already in, how do you get out? And he said that it actually takes an out-of-the-box experience, which is what it's difficult to think of. Like, you're in the box towards someone, then you have to find almost a different avenue to get out of the box. And then you can reapproach that person with an out-of-the-box concept. I've been trying to figure out how to do that. How do you do that?
It's like walking away and then coming back, right? Isn't that why people walk away, maybe?
I think that is what I have to do.
Yeah. So I love that you brought that up, Austin. I'm so glad. I forgot all about that because and this is something that I've like brought up, for example, with my husband a couple of times. I'm like, because we'll say things like, well, if only you would stop then I could be where you want me to be. And it's like this little cycle that we're in, this dance that we're in. And in the other book that discusses these concepts as well, the bonds that make men free or whatever, they talk about it and they call it collusion, where it's just like, I see, so I do, and then you see, so you do, and then you're just kind of like stuck in that cycle, in that loop, that endless loop. And so what you're talking about, Austin, is like removing yourself. You know, we all have heard the phrase, it takes two to tango. So if you don't want to do that dance anymore, leave. And if you need to physically remove yourself or whatever, then that's great. But you do have to find a way out, I think, of your head too.
Well, I think it'd be great. So it depends on who it is, right?
Totally.
But if it's like a spouse and you both can read the book, and then when you're in that moment, you can say, I'm in the box, I'm going to need a moment. Like,
right.
Because if you both have read it, then
you've got those cue words.
Yeah, you've got like a cue word. And at the same time, they might be like, oh, am I in the box? Right? Like it gets you both, maybe. I don't know,
though. They mentioned in there that he knew he was out of the box when he questioned his own virtue. As soon as he was questioning himself, he realized that he had found a way out, right?
Ooh, that like gives me the chills.
A periodic question to ask ourselves. I don't know if that would help or not, but it's like, am I doing something that could be perceived as unstoppable?
I love
so like take a moment to yourself in that sense and just ponder, and you might get faster at it, right? As you like we were talking about the practice of it.
That's what I would hope. I wonder if there's a way to build that neurological connection to recognize it.
But
I think if it's practice,
I think if you consciously say I'm going to do this, and you've recognized the triggers, right? Oh, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling defensive, or whatever. That's like your red flag goes up in your cue to yourself that, hey, take a minute, pause, evaluate my own virtue, like you said, or my own contribution to this problem. You know, we had some friends once who said the best phrase that you can say in marriage is, you might be right. And so we were joking, like immediately after they told us that, and the conversation kind of continued. And my husband said it to me like literally like less than a minute later. So it was all still fresh. And we knew exactly, he was kind of, like making a joke about that. But it was crazy. Like, even though I knew what was happening, I immediately felt calm. I was like,
well, and I think that would help calm yourself. Like, so if you say that, you're not even like, you're not necessarily, you're not admitting anything. So maybe, you're not admitting, but it gives you a second to like step back and say, okay, let me think about this for a moment, but also them.
Like I love to use that phrase, you might be right, because it gives you that like audible cue to yourself and hopefully to your partner.
Well, it's not even audible. It gives them a relief. Like they've almost won, right? Like
that's what I'm saying. Like, I knew that he was mocking the whole conversation, but it still worked. It worked. It was crazy. It was just like, I felt immediately calmer. I think he did, so I think that there's things like that Austin's talking about that we can do to help us kind of reset, so to speak.
Yeah. What do you think, Austin?
Keep going. Austin's got good insight.
I like that. So as far as like recognizing, sorry, she's going to keep screaming every once in a while, I guess. But as far as recognizing that we're in the box, what do you think are some ways that we could stay out? I didn't pick up from the book exactly how to do that. Do you guys know?
Was that in one of the other books, Stephanie, by chance, to how to stay out?
Well, I don't remember specifically, But I would say that for sure, I would think that the anatomy of peace would help kind of it would dive into that a little bit more. And again, like I said, for me, because I have a thick skull and I'm a slow learner, the rereading of the book probably on a regular basis is what's beneficial to me. Practice, 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 practice. Just the whole heightened awareness around the concept initially is a good start. Looking for, your own mental cues, whatever. I mean, there's lots of.
The other book, The Outward Mindset, it says in here that it's how to implement and sustain it. And it says across organizations, but I'm pretty sure they apply that. Like it can be applied personal.
Yeah, right? Your family is an organization.
So I wonder if that one would answer your question, because I feel like they didn't, like, this book was almost like here's what it is, and here's what you like. It's like here's what the issue is, but not how. Like, because I feel like the how would be so in depth, and it's going to be different per person. Right. So yeah. I'm wondering if that one might answer your question more, Austin, because I don't know how to say it. Because guess what? I think we're all trying to learn how to stay out of the box.
So one thought that I had was, it mentions that when we're in the box, we see people as objects, right?
Yep.
So if we take a minute to see people and recognize people as people, would that help us?
Absolutely. So, and something that I have always tried to do, and I think this is what I said, I'm actually surprised that I was out of the box a little more than I thought I should be in a lot of circumstances, is that I try to put myself in people's shoes. Like when people are very frustrating, right? Like, well, what are they going through right now? Like maybe they're having a really bad day, or this family situation, like try to like almost put like a bad scenario happening in their life, because that makes me feel better about them. Like I feel for them at that moment. And so, like if it's like, let's say it's a kid or a spouse, and like maybe they're having a really bad day and they do not feel well. Like,
yeah, maybe they just feel sick. Maybe they have a headache.
Yeah. And I mean, that alone helps you feel a little bit better towards somebody. It's just like a little teeny bit, right? But like I've tried to do that for a long time, and I think that helps me, but it was a practice, and I've kind of fallen out of it. And that's what I was noticing after reading the book. I'm like, ooh, I don't do that as much as I used to. So that's something that I think really helps, is trying to put yourself in that person's situation.
I like that.
And even if you have to make up the situation, like
totally do it. Do it. Because guess what? Here's the thing. We make up stories anyway about where they could, like why they're mistreating us, or why they're behaving badly towards us or somebody else. Like we think we know the whole story, and we don't.
Yeah. And something else that you could do too that might help is try to see how they're envisioning you. So like, I mean, they were kind of talking about that in the book, where, okay, well, how does so-and-so feel towards you when this happens, right? So if you can sit back and be like, well, they feel anger towards me right now because I did something. I don't know what that is, but like, you might feel a little bit of like, oh, they're not happy. Like, maybe just trying to put yourself in their situation. And I know that's harder to do than,
Well, I think in general, even when we're not dealing with people like immediately in our vicinity, but in general, the practice of seeing people as people instead of as objects. I know somebody who, it's just kind of like their nature. It's not necessarily like a conscientious thing. It's more just like kind of habit. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just easy, like, especially when you're just sitting and watching TV, to make a negative or derogatory comment about a person that you see on TV, for example. And so in that moment, even though you have zero humanity towards that person or any sort of connection to that person on a personal level, because they're just being broadcast through, the TV. But if you can practice in that moment of saying something positive instead, or, like Megan said, make up a story about why that person is behaving the way that they are, acting. I mean, it can even be a character in a TV show for all we care. Just like that practice of seeing other people as human beings with feelings and emotions and, bad days and health misalignments and, being off hormonally, like whatever it might be. Their cat just died, their dad just got put in the care center, like whatever it might be, the stories that we don't know. And so let's start just practicing seeing how other people could be the way that they are because of something we don't know about.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think it's so interesting how the book mentions once we're in the box, even sincere behavior like apologies or things like that can be felt as fake. Well, for what they are, right? They are fake when we're in the box.
Yeah, I was going to say they're generally not sincere if we are in the box. An apology, we can say the words, but they don't convey the same meaning when we're in the box.
You can go through the exact same motions, whether you're in or out of the box, and have two entirely different results.
Yeah, which
you go ahead, you got it.
Well, I was just going to say, which brings up the flip side of that too, right? Because is it Hal who was conducting the? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember who it was.
Anyway, so the guy that was conducting this like training session.
I think it's Bud.
What's his name?
Yeah, Bud sounds familiar.
Yeah, Hal was the guy that he was, I think.
Yeah, Bud is who it is.
So Bud talks about how he had an experience early on in his career where he kind of got reprimanded because he didn't perform his job fully. And so he talks about how you can be hard on somebody and still be out of the box, which I think is super valuable because, I know plenty of people who'd be like, oh, you live in a make-believe world then if you're going to try to live this way where it's all rainbows and sunshine. Well, that's not what they're saying at all. They're not saying you need to go around and be like, everything is good. Like everything is awesome. Like a song, right? It's not that way. We can still be hard. We can still be firm. We can still hold people accountable for their actions and words and whatever, but we can do it and approach it from an out of the box mindset. And we don't have to be so like, we can, like you said, Austin, we can apologize for something. And if we're in the box, we'll know that the apology is like going to come across something like this. I'm sorry, but you made me whatever. That's not an apology. An apology out of the box might sound something like, I'm so sorry that you had a bad day and that I reacted the way that I did. Like what's something that we can work on together? So same kind of words, different meaning altogether.
Yeah. And it actually said that when you're out of the box, you'll actually feel the urge, right? You'll feel that urge to apologize, or you kind of feel that you have been maybe mistreating others once you've had that realization.
Isn't that exciting?
That is pretty exciting. I like the format of this book too. I really enjoyed that it was a story rather than just information.
Totally.
Well, I think it made it more personal. Like you could actually, as you're listening to it or reading it, you're envisioning what's happening in your life and how you like, oh yeah, that's totally me, right? Like you have an experience going on in your head as you're reading it, right? Am I right?
Yes. 100%.
Is it says that once you're in the box, You cannot focus on results. Did you guys catch that in there too?
Get such good nuggets.
I know, right? I'm like, how do you, aren't you listening to this audio version and you're getting all these little nuggets?
Do you take notes, Austin?
I do try to take notes. And I listened to it like 3 times. I mean,
that helps. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute.
On.
How did you get so many? Because I'm sitting here like, I need to read this again. And I'm going to hand it off to I'm going to have Eric read it. And my daughter's going to read it.
Nice.
I'll be a family in this.
Too. Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a great family read.
Seriously, because it's an easy enough read that, like you're saying, your kids, like anybody who can read, for the most part, I would say like down to an 8-year-old could read this book and at least, get something out of the story. Mm-hmm. You might not grasp the full concept, but I would say for sure a teenager could start.
Well, and I love it too, because like a teenager, I could be like, okay, I want you to call me out on it, right? Like,
yeah,
that way I can start noticing it too, right? Because I think that would be great. Like, I think you're in the box, Mom, or something like that. I'd be like,
and if you approach it that way, if you were to invite somebody to read it for you to be
let me know what I'm doing wrong. Yeah
instead of like calling them out, like, you need this.
I mean,
that invitation,
that's a great way to look at it
there too, right? They're like, hey, I want you to read this mostly so that when I'm not behaving, you can tell me and you can help me recognize when I'm in the box per se.
When I'm doing I love that way of thinking of it, rather than you need to read this because you'll benefit from it. No,
right.
I'm going to benefit from it if you read it because you're going to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like, who's not going to want to read that for you if you're having
but if you're like, no, you have problems and you need to read this book, then people will
would you consider it sincere if you're really feeling that way though? You're like, man, you could really benefit from this.
No, because I think everybody can. I think that's actually like the benefit of it, is that everybody can.
That's the thing. Like, you could say to some, like, I invited, this person who was struggling in her marriage. I invited her to read it because I felt like she could benefit.
Well, and you could even say like, hey, I feel like you could benefit from this, but I feel like you reading it will help benefit me more because you're going to point out some things that I need to work on.
But see, in that situation, our relationship didn't need it at that moment. But inside of a family unit, or a workplace unit or something.
I mean, I'm just thinking like when it's a spouse situation, like there's, the feelings come flying, right? So like if you try to put it more on yourself, the other person might like, hey, will you help me? Because that's something too with kids, rather than telling kids to do something. Reading kid like parenting books, right? They say, hey, will you help me with this rather than do this for me? Right. Or, so if you make them feel like, hey, this will really help me if you read this, and, or, because my kids are more willing to do stuff when I ask, hey, will you help me? Oh yeah, Mom, I'll come help you. Right. Rather than like, do this. Oh, Mom. Right.
Totally.
Kids are naturally better at being out of the box. They do always want to help when asked, for the most part.
Your kids are still young, Austin, though.
Isn't that interesting? So that Austin brings up a really interesting point, though. I feel like we all start this life mostly out of the box, right?
Right.
We're not we're not crying because we want to like cause misery on our parents' lives, right?
Well, think how easy kids forgive
so fast.
Oh my gosh, like I can make a mistake and I'll be like, oh crap, I messed up on that one. And they're like, hi Mom, I love you, give me hugs, right? And you're like, yeah, sorry about that. Like, but they don't even, they're so out of the box with everything. They just feel love towards everyone, right?
Yeah. And I think for as long as they do feel love from an individual, it is easier for them to stay out of the box towards that individual. Does that make sense?
Well, even like there's situations, I mean, I'm thinking of kids that are in horrible family situations where they're abused, and they still love that person. Yeah. So I think we can learn from kids, like, what are these, like, how are they wired?
But to a certain degree, Because to a certain degree, that love starts to turn into a really like needy kind of like a dangerous situation for them. But yes, like isn't that true in most situations? How can we be more like children?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
Well, what was interesting too, it's very easy, I think, to relate this to your personal life, right? Like you want to have better relationships with those you love, those that are around you. But, from a work standpoint, where they related in the end, they're like, there's nothing more abundant in the workplace than self-deception.
That's the number one problem that they deal with.
Exactly. Yeah. And they even mentioned, companies have approached them about their success in the book, right?
Yeah.
And said, what's your secret? And they tell them the secret and they're like, there's no way. Right.
Yeah.
They just walk away.
That can't be it. That can't be it. That's basically what they say.
I love how he used the illustration of like other companies will duplicate our processes or our materials or, whatever.
Even our talented people. They'll even
and they still have problems. They don't get the same results that we do because of this one problem.
So as an entrepreneur, you want to, it talks about as being an out of the box leader, you inspire smart people to be smarter, good working people to be more good working. I think that's a really powerful tool in the tool belt here to recognize that.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people just want to be seen, right? Like,
oh yeah.
And in business settings, not all, but a bunch, right? It's about like trying to move up, trying to be the best, trying to be, rather than, well, what's the best for the company? And that's what these people that are out of the box are actually thinking, is what's best for the company, not what's best for me. Like,
right.
And I think that's why they are so successful.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think about it too. I don't know if you guys have had a lot of experiences like this, but I think of one of the first jobs that I had. My boss was definitely an out of the box leader in that he was amazing, right? I got paid like $8 an hour and I would have given my life for that job, right? Like I was not doing anything, but for this boss, I still think of him to this day. Whenever I'm like, man, what would Sam do?
Oh, wow.
And it's crazy that at the end of the day, that's what made me stay for as long as I did. Once I left that situation within the same company, I was promoted, I was paid more, I had more responsibilities. I kept going and I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Interesting.
But I mean, management makes a big difference, right? And how you feel about a company.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fascinating, Austin.
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. But he truly cared about, the people that were inside of the organization. And he wanted.
I would love to know some specific character traits or actions that he did.
That's what's funny is it's hard to
pinpoint.
Put your finger on it because he did everything a boss would do. He got upset with me.
Yeah, I was gonna say he probably like in the book where they told you you're doing something wrong, right?
Right. Exactly. Okay, so I just saw a section in here where it says all actions can be done in or out of the box. It's just all about like let's see, where does it say? We aim to anyway, we keep people focused on results and on others. The culture of blame that is so prevalent in organizations is replaced with a culture of deep responsibility taking and accountability. People who focus on themselves and on being justified don't last. That's what they were saying about, Zagram, the company that they were working for.
Yeah. So I'm still racking my brain to figure out exactly what it was but I would say it was like a sincere care for our futures, and he was constantly.
So he saw you as a person.
Yes, that's definitely apparent. Saw you as a person
in a simplistic, response, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read a little excerpt about when they talk about the collusion. This is Kate talking, and she's giving the example with her son Brian. Remember how she had always thought that he was kind of like a troublemaker and causing her problems, and what, she can't trust him, right? And then he asked to borrow the car, and she gave him this really unrealistic deadline. And then when he came in just in the nick of time, she still couldn't let him like win or whatever, right? So she said, Brian and I provide each other with such perfect justification. It's almost as if we colluded to do so. It's as if we said to each other, look, I'll mistreat you so that you can blame your bad behavior on me. If you'll mistreat me so that I can blame my bad behavior on you. They didn't of course, say that out loud to each other, but how they provoked each other kind of led up to that. When two or more people are in their boxes toward each other, mutually betraying themselves, we often call it collusion. And when we're in collusion, we actually collude in condemning ourselves to ongoing mutual mistreatment.
Yeah, I remember that excerpt from the book, and I thought I definitely am not innocent from that.
Yeah, like she goes on to say, however bitterly I complain about someone's poor behavior, actually this is bad, but anyway, someone's poor behavior toward me and about the trouble it causes me, I also find it strangely delicious.
That's right. Right.
So I mean,
at a level below behavior, we almost need that when we're in the box, right? Is what it goes on to say.
Yeah, we need other people to behave badly so that we can feel justified about our own bad behavior.
Yep.
Well, and I love Bud shared the example when he was the lawyer, and his supervisor, he messed up, right? And they had a phone call and she took the blame for him. Right. Yes. And he was like in shock because he's like, that was my mistake, not yours. And she's like, well, actually, like, I should have checked it. It's so, and I love at the end. Her responsibility was checking his work. Yeah, but she said at the end, she didn't need to blame me, even though I made this mistake, because she herself wasn't in the box. Out of the box, she had no need for justification. So she didn't blame him because she didn't need to justify it. Like, there was a mistake, that's where it's at, and we're moving on. That's how we stay out of the box. Yeah. But I love though, like, if you look back at your boss, Austin, like, if you made a mistake, he probably took the heat for it, which makes you more like, oh, I'll do anything for this boss because they have my back, right? Right. But I'm not going to mess up again because of, like, it's like this, seeing somebody as a person, but you will do anything for that person because they have your back. And like, it's like this whole like mind game that we play with ourselves, right? It's, I mean, some people would call that negative, or what do they call that when you do the reverse psychology? Is that what they call it, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, now you're just like letting them off the hook, so they're just going to take advantage of you. And I'm the kind, I'm with Bud and those guys. Like, I think that's exactly how I always step up. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I can see how much they care about me, so I'm going to level up. I'm going to, rise to the challenge, and I want to make their life easier because they care really significantly about me. Yeah, wouldn't you feel like they feel like that you are a person to them, that they care about you, if they're gonna like, oh no, that was my bad. Like, yep. Yeah. Where they could have been like, oh yeah, so and so did the mistake. It was so and so's fault. Just like in that example at the beginning when I was talking about how I like try to own as much of the problem as I can with my clients, and suddenly it's like deflating the balloon. There's no more ammunition for them whatsoever because I just used it all up. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I took a couple notes here really quick. When it was approaching the end, it had a couple really good points that I liked.
Okay.
And one of them was, so when you discover you've been in the box, don't give up on yourself and keep trying. That's like the goal there, right? Is once we figured out, we want to keep going. And it also, I put, don't deny that you've been in the box when you have. So you need to apologize and keep trying to be more open in the future. And then the last two that I had was, don't focus on what others are doing wrong. Focus on what you can do right.
Okay.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, there was a couple here at the end that I thought were really cool. And this one, I think it's very easy to become a victim when you feel that others are not helping you. And so I put, don't worry whether others are helping you. Only worry if you are helping others.
Totally.
So once you've become the victim, I feel like you're right back into the box.
Absolutely. Because guess what? A victim always needs
justification.
They always need justification. They always need a perpetrator.
Yep.
And as long as you're a victim, you're looking for somebody to be that perpetrator, that's causing harm. Chapter 24 has a lot of really good ones. I like to write at the end, page 174 for me, it says, merely knowing the material doesn't get you out of the box. Living it does. And we're not living it if we're using it to diagnose others. Rather,
that's a good one.
We're living it when we're using it to learn how we can be more helpful to others. I think that's kind of what you were talking about, Austin, too.
Yeah, definitely. I've almost wanted to print up these bullet cards on a business card and just throw it in my wallet.
Yeah. So on page 173, I underlined it and marked it and gave them all numbers. It was like number 1, it was just like, are you think about whether you're focused on results. Number 2, are you open or closed to correction? Number 3, actively seek to learn and enthusiastically teach what you could have. Let's see. Number 5, hold yourself fully accountable in your work. Number 6, or if you've taken shifted responsibility when things went wrong. It's kind of like contrast there, right? Number 7, do you move quickly to solutions? Or number 8, do you find perverse value in problems? So I like to tell my kids to be problem solvers instead of problem makers. I like to tell them, own it. Be aware of the situation around you. Kind of look outside yourself. And I think they kind of sum it up all up there. And whether you earn the trust of others is another good one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, just sitting here with this makes me want to, I need to read this at least 3 more times.
Yeah, I've been listening to it a lot up and down from the airport. So I'm like, man, this is so good. It's got so much good information and so much real world application.
Have you ever read it before, Austin?
I have not. So I was very glad that you guys decided to bring that to the table this month.
Okay, it was awesome. Megan, you haven't read it either?
No, I haven't. And that's what I'm like, well, now I want to read these other ones. The Anatomy of Peace and then that mindset one.
I'm so happy to have people to talk to about these concepts.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to drop off, you guys, but I really appreciated it.
Hey, thanks for your
thanks, Austin.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't be on the regular call this time. It's
okay. Life happens and we roll with it.
That's right. That's what I figure. At least we'll show up and we'll do it.
We heard your awesome comments and thoughts, so it was great.
Good enough. Well, thanks again. We'll see you.
Take care. Bye, Austin.
Bye.